state of meditation. It is not really
Well, today's lesson, I'm going to draw from Allan Kardec's The Spirit book. And I know I've talked about this book several times in some of the short pieces that I've shared. It's a collection of teachings from different seances. And he took those teachings and he formatted them. And in this particular section here, they're talking about reincarnation. So today's lesson is going to be based on that. And he asks the question, do spirits foresee the epoch of their next return to corporeal life? And the spirits answered him, saying, they have the presentiment of that return, as a blind man feels the heat of the fire he is approaching. They know that they will be reincarnated, as you know that you will die, but without knowing when the change will occur. So the way I interpret this, and I can only present the way I interpret these things to kind of give you a coax you a little bit to interpret it in your own fashion. But the way I interpret this is that the only difference between the spirit realm and the realm we are familiar with is that we call it the spirit realm because we are in this one. And they teach a lot about how nature permeates both realms. The principles of nature are the same in both realms. Now, my mother presently talks a lot about dying. And some people would find that, I had the word and then it just flew away. But some people might interpret that as a desire to die. However, it can also be seen as preparing oneself for the next journey. After all, it's common knowledge that we will all die in this life. And here we have it presented that when we move to the other realm, everybody over there will, in a sense, die. Because death is what? It's a transition. And if it's a transition from this realm into the next, then it's going to be a transition in the other realm as they too move from their realm into this one. Does that kind of make sense? And we have this sensation of knowing when our time, for lack of a better word, is coming. We have that sensation. It's up to us whether to acknowledge it or not. And when we do acknowledge it and we talk about it, people interpret it as, why is it that you want to die? Why are you talking about this? And it can be seen as a preparation of ourselves and a preparation of those around them for that death. And as it's mentioned here, we know the time, we've entered that time, but we still don't know exactly when, unless, of course, you are Swedenborg or Nostradamus, and then they write it down on a piece of paper or whatever, and then on that day they just poof, they're gone. And I've read this. I think it was Nostradamus with gosh, I want to say Luther. It may not have been Luther. It may have been another one, but it was one of those Christian icons that was responsible for the changes within Christianity, that had written him and had an appointment. And I'm going to go with Nostradamus. It could just as easily have been Swedenborg, but I'm going to go with Nostradamus. And Nostradamus wrote him back saying that you need to be here before this day, because I will not be here on that time that you will be in my area speaking. And Luther, or whoever it was seeking an audience with him, paid no mind to it. And then when that date came up, well, Nostradamus had already moved from this realm into the next realm. So we do get these sensations. I'm sure each of you has experienced some sense of foreboding. And because of that sense of foreboding, you watched for something. You weren't able to put your finger on it, but you watched for something. And it's no different than that from what I am interpreting from this. And what I wrote is that reincarnation then is a necessity of spirit life, as death is a necessity of corporeal life. So what are your thoughts on this? And since Beth is in front of me, I will begin. I will just ask her thoughts.
It makes sense to me. In one of those music videos, I don't know if the first or the second, there was a line that said something to the effect that you're only as developed when you get to the next side as you're only as wise in the next side as you do the work here. Well, it just makes sense. So I'm going to be developed as far as I can develop here. Boom. Into the next dimension, I'm going to be there. But then I can develop further. Let's say I want to be a guide. Well, I'm going to have to do a heck of a lot of studying and a lot more work before, boom, I can transition to that dimension. And then who knows beyond that other dimension what I can aspire to. So it just makes sense. It was transition after transition after transition. And as I'm fond of quoting James Barrie and Peter Pan, death is but the next adventure, or the greatest adventure. So
yeah. There is a book. It's by Rudolf Steiner. And the book is called Occult Science. And in it, he writes that in order for us to continue our growth in this life, we have to first attain where we left off in the previous life. So it would only make sense that when we transitioned into the spirit realm, we would have to, again, get to that point to where we were at before the transition for our growth to continue. And if we take this even further, and with that quote you referred to, Beth, then the wisdom we gather here, we take with us into the spirit realm. And the wisdom we add to that in the spirit realm, we take with us into this realm. And I'm going to go out on a limb here because I don't know if I have that particular question in these points here, but, and now it escaped me. So, oh, anyway, yes, I think I've got it now. So when you move here, there is that necessity of forgetfulness. And the purpose of that forgetfulness is so that we do not become overwhelmed. And they also share that it's similar when we move from this realm into the next realm, that there is that forgetfulness in a manner of speaking. We're still stuck here when we're there. And when we move from there to here, we're stuck there for a while we're here, because how often have we seen toddlers and babies doing what cats do? So, and Sharon, what are your thoughts?
Well, it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense because we do see, I think there's a period of adjustment, I guess you could call it too, where you transition, but you're still connected, and vice versa, either way. My grandson used to talk about all his other family and oh my goodness gracious, all that stuff. And it was just all kind of amazing actually to me. But and I think like your mom talking about it, about going, it's not morose, it's not macabre or whatever people might think. It's all those kind of things. But it's a reality that she's facing, and all of us are facing. And the older you get, the closer you get to it, you think about it. How much longer do I have? How much longer do I really have? 10 years, 20 years? When you look at it like that, it's like, wow, gosh, that other 60 really went, that other 70 really flew by. How could I just have 10 years left? Or how could I just have 20 years left? But it's probably not a good idea to think about that too much, because you're hurting yourself in the sense that you're not being able to enjoy the time you have by not dwelling on the time. Just be present, be there, as best you can. So that's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, there's Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
Mm-hmm.
In that, he tells of a story, and a lot of that centers around the financial collapse, the Great Depression. And the markets had collapsed, and there was the one person here who was just saying, oh, essentially, I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. And the way he presents it is they fought themselves to death. He went into a motel room or something of that nature, and that was where he was focused at, because that financial collapse was so devastating. And he presents it. He literally thought himself to death. So yes, if you become obsessed with something, it's going to dramatically influence your life experience. If you obsess on death, then you shorten that life experience. If you obsess on something else, that obsession is going to have a huge bearing on the experience you're having now. And let me see here. Kardec asked another question. Is the spirit who animates the body of a child as developed as that of an adult? And the response was probably more so if before reincarnating they had progressed further. The spirit acts according to the state of the instrument by which they can manifest themselves. And I think it was you, Sharon, that was talking about the grandson, that was talking about this other family. The thing about babies and toddlers and children, especially before they reach the age of 7 and 10, in between those ages there, they are malleable. Their brains are malleable. They're just literally soaking up information. And that is the best time for them to be learning, because they soak that information up. It's a sponge. And during that time, that connection, they're still able to draw from those two realms, from that other realm. They're still able to draw information from there into them. And I'm going out on a limb here, and I'm going to say it's because the brain and the mind is so malleable at that time, to where they can tap into those memories without overwhelming themselves. Now, if they were to do that as an adult, well, you start getting things all jumbled up. And sometimes that happens with me doing these trances that we have. Sometimes I'd lose touch. I don't know if it's my thoughts, if it's their thoughts, or a combination of the two. I just don't know at times. Sometimes I'm not even sure what realm I'm in, like Beth is experiencing. So, and let me see here. Rachel, you got an opportunity to share some thoughts?
Well, I guess what I was thinking was, I wonder if the spirits on the other side are there as long as our lives are here. And like what residual spirit under, like you watch like the shows where people go contact spirits with a EVP or something, like, is that residual energy that's just stuck there? That's what came to mind when I heard that.
That's a good question. And in some instances, it's suggested. In other instances, it's suggested that that particular soul is I don't want to say stuck there, but they haven't come to the realization that they've moved from that realm into the next realm. And so they continue to go about their daily routines. And think about it. We exist in a culture that does not prepare us for death. A culture does not prepare us for the other side, so to speak. And what they do teach us is that everything is better than what it is here on the other side. So a lot of us are literally dying to get there. And when we read some of these spirit teachings that are shared with us from authors like Allan Kardec and Johann Grieber and some of the others, they tell an altogether different story. And it's an interesting question. And as I said, some of them say that earthbound spirits, and there's probably a lot of them, because we don't prepare anybody for death. In fact, it's a topic that we go out of our way to avoid. And even in some of the Buddhist writings I've read, that, their whole purpose of being is to prepare people for death, prepare them to die. That's why they teach not to hold on to stuff, because if you're holding on to it here, you carry it with you. And we don't want to carry some of this stuff with us. And so with that, yes, it can be residual energy. It can be earthbound souls. It can be souls that have not come to the conclusion that they've moved from this realm into the next realm, because they still continue to go about their daily routine. And it can be residual energy, because our emotions, and depression is a good one to talk about, because people have often walked into a room and have made the comment, oh man, it feels so depressing in here. Well, that's that emotional energy, that residual energy that you mentioned, Rachel, that is emanating from the walls. So it can be both. There is no definitive answer there. It can be both. So any other thoughts?
No.
Okay. I hope I didn't overwhelm you there.
I mean, I could go on and on about it, but yeah.
Okay, cool. And Connie, what are your thoughts?
I really don't have any.
Wow.
Yeah, kind
Okay.
of slow today.
Oh, I wouldn't say slow today, but it's not often that happens, and I think that's twice you've said that.
Yeah.
So let's look at the next point here that I took from this. And the question that Kardec asks, why does the incarnated spirit lose remembrance of their past? We talked about this a little bit. And the spirit teachers responded, without the veil, which hides certain things from their view, they would be blinded like one moving from darkness into light. Through the forgetfulness of their past, they are more fully themselves. Meaning that if we have these continuous reincarnations, imagine being able to recall those past lives. And the real question would be, how could you tell a memory about this life from a life 3 lifetimes back? How would you be able to separate those? I don't know about you, but a lot of times my memories tend to run one right into the other, regardless of what time zone it happens to be in. So the necessity for forgetfulness is for our benefit in all actuality. It's for our benefit. And I haven't actually read anywhere in these teachings that when you go over there, you remember all of your past lives. I have not read anything that gives that indication. What I have read is that the soul can focus their mind and they can recall those memories if they choose. And when you think about it, if we focus our minds here, and I want to say Dr. Weiss, who has a video. Okay, I see Sandy nodding her head, so I got it right. Has a video that takes you through an exercise for remembering past lives. So it's not that we can't, that barrier is not permanent, but if we focus our minds, we can remember instances from previous lives. So again, this is another demonstration of the natural principles extending into both realms. And I don't think I've called on Sandy yet. So what are your thoughts about this, Sandy?
Well, I've read a couple of books by Dr. Weiss, and he's a psychiatrist, and he helps people who sometimes have issues, and he regresses them through hypnosis to try to find out why someone is going through what they're going through. And invariably, there will be an incarnation where something happened and it had stayed in that emotional, that mindset, and kind of brought it forward. And when you find out what it was, you can move away from it. And he's very interesting. I really like him a lot. But it does stand to reason. I always kind of felt like you don't necessarily need to remember everything about the past lives. Let's just like the one you had before, because what I always felt was that you brought with you what you learned from it. So you didn't really need to remember it. I'm trying to think of an example. Just for instance, you may have something in your life where you just have no problem with that. Like you're going along, you've got it, you nailed it, you know it. Something that a lesson that, well, someone may have a problem with that. You say, well, I understand that they do, but gosh, I don't have a problem with that at all. And I have to assume that somewhere down the line, I learned that lesson. So that's and I mean, not to say I don't have a lot of other lessons, but I'm just saying, I always felt like that was kind of why you didn't need to know the specifics, because you brought forth with you what you gained from it. And that's kind of always been my take on it. And I mean, the little kids, I mean, the stuff they tell you is amazing. It's just amazing. My grandmother, Sharon, my grandmother used to tell me about, I would wake up and tell the story, and I don't know, I don't know whether there's three, I have no memory of it. But that the shark got me and my skin was yellow. And my father was a doctor, remember, Sharon? And he couldn't save me. And I had this dream more than once, and I used to wake up, I guess, crying. I don't know. But I have no idea how far back that was, but it wasn't necessarily emotional, but it was just a memory, I guess, that just kind of stayed in my subconscious. I don't know. But like you say, I have no memory of having this dream. My grandmother told me about it, that I had this dream. So, and Sharon, the book we read, the book we read about the little boy. I can't remember the name of the book, but if you ever want to read a fascinating book about a past life experience,
Yeah.
it is Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. What was it called, Sharon?
Soul Survivor.
Soul Survivor is a wonderful book.
Mhm.
So anyway, and when you said about when we go from here to the next, we don't carry all our memories from this life into the next, but I think we probably do carry our connections with family, and we have that spark of people that we love. I think we probably carry that forth, don't you think?
Well, not according to the readings, but I may have not spoken clearly. Because yes, you do carry stuff with you from this realm into the next. But think of it like this. You just talked about this dream that you don't remember telling your grandmother about. Okay. And that same principle would most likely carry over into the next realm. You're not going to remember all the specifics in this one. You're going to remember the generalities, because that's what memories are until you focus on it. And it's when you focus on a particular memory that you're able to extract the details from it. It's how a lot of artists are able to accomplish their works and such. You know, they see this image in nature and they extract energy from it. The colors they use expresses their emotions and such. So it's not that we forget everything when we go to the other side, and it's not like we forget everything when we come from the other side, because we have what they call intuition. And the only way you can remember something is if you've experienced it, which does not necessarily indicate that you remember the experience itself. And that's what intuition actually is. It's tapping into this information field and comprehending something that you cannot explain, because you have no memory of the experience, but you know that this and this, when they come together, this is what's going to happen. You just know it. And that's what we call intuition. And what's to say that's not drawing on information that you learned while you were on the spirit side? There are a lot of things that we experience that we have no explanation for. And yes, explanations are there. There's always, for every effect, there's always a cause. We'll be discussing that in our next class with in February. But that doesn't necessarily indicate that for every effect we can find the cause, because we may not have the necessary equipment. We may not have the necessary knowledge. It's how God came into being. Okay, this happened. What caused it to happen? We can't see what caused that to happen. We can't make that discovery, but it happened. So we have to give it something, because our minds cannot comprehend something that just happens with no beginning. Our minds cannot comprehend an end without a beginning, or a beginning without an end. Because when we look at nature, everything has a beginning and everything has an end. We just know that. Spring starts at a certain time of year and ends at another time of year. Now, while those specific times fluctuate, we know it's going to happen. We know that's the way it works. We can't see it. It's like energy. We don't see energy, but we see the results of energy. And because we cannot see energy, we give it a designation, whether it's God, Allah, divine, doesn't make a difference, but we give it a designation so it doesn't drive us nuts.
Yeah.
So, and that's very good. Dr. Weiss, if I recall correctly, actually pioneered the field of past life regression. And I know he's got several books out. And I don't know, I know there's several videos on YouTube, but there's the one in particular where it's titled one thing, but what he actually does is he takes you through this exercise of a past life regression. And it's a meditative exercise. He takes you through that. And if you're able to relax and just focus on his voice, you can experience that. So.
Good.
And let me see here. Well, any last thoughts, Connie?
Nope.
Okay. How about you, Sharon? Any last thoughts? No? All right.
No,
Rachel, any last thoughts?
Thing unmuted. I listened to a lady, I forget what her last name is, but her name was Barbara, I think. I think she's passed on now, but she used to do a lot of hypnosis sessions and talk about, like, we're in Earth school and there's two different planets. I can't remember this lady's name, but she's interesting. And if you know what lady I'm talking about, you'll have to let me know, or I'll let you know later. But that was my only thought on that.
Okay. Any last thoughts, Beth?
This has been very helpful for me. I think it's kind of given me a little boost out of my doldrums. And I just enjoy this exploration of thought and ideas, because it's certainly not anything we're taught in school.
Right. And any last thoughts, Sandy?
An observation. And I have thought about this, about being a small child, and we're told in human beings that we are, essentially, people say we are born, empty, blank, there's nothing there, and then, we are taught and filled through our childhood and adulthood. But I've always thought about it, and for decades I've thought about this, that as a small child, and I'm going to say this in simplistic language because I don't even know how to describe it. I never saw myself as a child. As soon as we can start, I think, having thought and memory, we see ourselves as the perfect, pure, maybe perfect. We see ourselves as that divine thing. We maybe not be able to describe it or put a word to it, but even as a small child, I I always felt that. I always felt like who I was who I always was and always will be. And that, that you were in this state of I don't know, harmony, perfectness of where you are right now, and child, ignorance or no, nothing. That's it. It doesn't enter the picture at all. But that's what people, tell you. So I always never felt like a child, even when I was a little child. I don't know if you ever felt that way, Sharon, but when you think back about it, that's what I always come back to. That anyway, just my observation.
I don't
Good
know.
observation.
I don't know.
Because as a child, we don't see ourselves as a child
Mhm.
because we don't know what a child is until one of our parents says, "Stop that."
Don't you know any better?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the education starts.
Yeah.
You're worthless. You're this and that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then we start developing these psychoses,
Yeah.
because all of our mental problems, I mean, Freud had it right. It can be traced back to childhood,
Mhm.
but it's not necessarily connected directly to the parents, but it's connected to what the parents taught us,
Mhm.
because we have to be taught. Well, before I get to say that, I need to back up. When we are children, we see ourselves as perfect because we don't know what imperfect is. And we don't know what perfect is either. We simply are. And then we are taught that we are not perfect and that being perfect is horrible. We don't realize that, but that's what we're teaching. You're not perfect. What makes you think you're perfect?
Mhm.
And that sends the message that being perfect is horrible. Nobody wants to be perfect. That's why they say, "Oh, I'm human." Because what we've been taught is that being human means that we're screwed up. And since we're human, it's okay to be screwed up.
Mhm.
And we carry that message with us. And that simple message has the potential to explode into all sorts of psychoses.
Mhm.
And, we're not going to go through life and not say that. But we should pay more attention and put more effort and more energy into the nurturing aspect. So when we do make comments like that, they don't stick. Because now Dr. Weiss pioneered that past life project. He pioneered that. And the only way for memories to be carried with us from life into life is the energy that is connected to it. It's like that room I mentioned that when you step into it, ooh, it's so gloomy in here, it's depressing. It's the same principle. There's so much energy connected to it that it bleeds through. And if we can learn to be more encouraging, more nurturing, then when we act in ways that are not good, it's easier to correct the fallout from it than it is if we do not focus on nurturing or forgiveness or everything else that goes along with it. If we adopt that lifestyle, and it bleeds from us, it emanates from us, then when we do those things that are not nurturing, that are not beneficial, it's easier to correct the fallout. It's easier to fix it, in a manner of speaking. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So
Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for your thoughts and everything. It's just so wonderful to get all these different ideas and to exchange ideas and words with each other, because that's how we learn, is from each other. And I want to thank all of you for participating in this. And I can stop that.